Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Friday Football Show with myself and Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, the Big Ten Network, and, of course, Fox as well. Glad that you're with us on the road this week. That's why there's a different background. Don't have the usual microphone, but, hey, it's the holidays, bouncing around all over the place. I'm at a hotel right now in Boston, so kind of doing this a little bit makeshift today, but, hey, huge game coming up on Sunday for Steelers and Ravens. Glad that you're with us. Mike, Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, Tim. And I think this would be a lot happier New Year for those who watch this show if the December 28th had gone a little differently.
Well, yeah, I think actually it'd be a lot easier to do because we'd be looking at a situation where this game would mean nothing. And honestly, I shouldn't say easier. For content purposes, it's been a much easier week. There's a lot more to talk about.
Absolutely.
For content purposes, it's been great for the media. For practicality, though, I mean, come on. It would be so much better for the Steelers to have what would go to basically a quasi-bye week, getting ready for whoever they're supposed to play in week one of the playoffs.
Absolutely, 100%. And that goes to, my first point that I want to make in our view from Mount Washington, the 30,000-foot big picture view, the state of the Steelers. This is the biggest regular season game the Steelers have played since Christmas 2016, the Immaculate Extension game. And it should have been an exhibition game. It should literally be a slightly more perilous exhibition game because whoever did go out there on Sunday night, and I wouldn't have been on Sunday night, obviously, if it didn't turn out this way, whoever did go out there on Sunday would be placing themselves in jeopardy somewhat of not playing the playoff game as opposed to not playing the opener. But that's exactly what this game should have been. And I sat here last week with you, Tim, and I said, did DK Metcalf cost the Steelers nothing or everything? And we are on the precipice of everything now. The two things that could have gone right for DK, so to speak, well, actually, there were three. One, his suspension could have been reduced. That didn't happen. Two, Baltimore could have gone up to Green Bay and stunk it out. That didn't happen. And three, the Steelers could have gone up and given a reasonable effort on offense and won in Cleveland. And all three of those would have gotten DK off the hook, and none of them happened. And so right now, what he did, who would have thought, Tim, after everything that's happened in the Steelers universe since the day they reported the mini camp back in May, that it would come down to some guy with a blue hair wig on,
the Ravens MVP,
over the rail and getting swiped at by DK, and that could be the deciding element of an NFL football season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of with you on all of that. My big picture view of them is that, Tomlin, if you heard him on his press conference, had to give a real hard sell about the AFC North Championship week. Like when he did his whole, hello, everybody, welcome to the press conference thing. Welcome to AFC North Championship week. That's him playing a psychological game with his players, with his fans, and himself, I think. He is selling this to himself. He is selling this to his players. And I think most of all, he's selling it to the fans so they actually have a home field advantage on Sunday night, as opposed to it being this bubbling cauldron where everybody is chanting to fire him, that's going to boo Renegade and everything else. I think he is trying to subtly build up the importance, build up the fanfare, build up the fan element of this game so that when the Steelers walk out there and the first time Derrick Henry pops off a run that's longer than 4 yards, it isn't panic and 502, if you get my drift.
Oh, 100%. I think you're absolutely right. And the reality is that, as he likes to say, the performance is going to dictate. The fans are going to go into this game ready to support because they know what's at stake and they want the team to win and they want the team to be in the playoffs. So they're going to go in ready to do their job, so to speak. But the performance will dictate how that goes. I mean, they didn't boo Renegade because they were ahead 7-3 at halftime of the Buffalo game. Most of the people at halftime had a reason to feel like that wasn't bad. It was everything that happened in the third quarter that led to that. So the performance itself, he's got to get those guys above the line. And if they are, then they'll carry the team, the fans over that. They'll get the fans to pull for them at an even greater level. If they come out and they do those Buffalo things, those Buffalo third quarter things that happened a month ago or so, then that's when things will start to turn.
I'm getting a little echo, Mike. I'm gonna try to unplug my. Actually, it's worse that way, so I'm just gonna leave him back in. I'm hearing you twice. Now that your point isn't twice, you hearing me twice?
No, I've got no problem.
All right. Well, I'll kind of power through here, but I wanted to make sure I could actually hear you when you were making your point there. So let's get to our keys to victory. You want to go first offensively, Mike?
Yeah. When I look at this, the only element of this game that gives me belief that the Steelers could be successful is the Baltimore pass rush. The Baltimore pass rush is 29th or 30th in the league, depending on how much you want to follow the tiebreaker, so to speak. They are near the very bottom, only 28 sacks on the season. And what we've seen from Aaron Rodgers is that when the pass rush isn't a worry, he's really good. Like if he were doing a 7-on-7 competition, he'd be up there like with everybody. He'd be up there with Stafford and all the rest of those guys. If it was just a 7-on-7 drill, he's making all the throws. He's playing with great comfort. And we saw that especially in the first Cincinnati game, but also in the second Cincinnati game. We've seen that down the stretch when they were able to control Aiden Hutchinson pretty well. We saw that up in Detroit. He has been really good in that circumstance. He's been really poor in those circumstances where he felt discomfort. And obviously, no better example of that than up in Cleveland 6 days ago. He was obviously uncomfortable with how much time he was given, with the concern about Myles Garrett coming over the line. And so that's what's got to happen on Sunday night is he's got to have that comfort. Just because their pass rush is poor doesn't mean that you do the adequate job of blocking. This team has mostly done an adequate job blocking, but they have to do that job. And then, of course, the element that we can't predict is they've got to find somebody to throw the football to.
Yeah.
And there are guys out there, they just don't seem to want to do it. I mean, Freiermuth not getting a target, if I remember correctly, is an actual stat until the final drive. Or maybe he might have had some targets in the 2-minute drill in the first half. But in any case, not getting a target in any of the game plan type situations it was coaching malpractice up in Cleveland. And I don't know who else there is that you say that's our guy. Scotty Miller on third down, fourth down, good for him. I mean, that's really nice. But Scotty Miller on a fourth down go route. I mean, who are we kidding here? Marquez Valdez-Scantling as a primary target on 3 game type situation receptions. I mean, that's not serious. It was not a serious game plan. It was not a serious approach. And that's what was most frustrating for those who watched last Sunday against Cleveland. And they've got to come up with a real answer, not a, well, we tried. Oh, that's who we had out there. That's not good enough because you've got football players out there that can make you better. And they're not going to them in the circumstance where they're the only ones that out there that can make you better.
Well, it also fuels, what everybody talks about with Tomlin not having the team ready to play against teams that are of lesser status, that are, like that stat that was being thrown around after the Cleveland defeat, which was that they are now 0 for their last 5 when it comes 0-4-1 in their last 5 when trying to beat teams that have records 8 games below 500 or worse, which is an unbelievable number. And like you said, when you don't have a serious game plan, it sort of connotes to everybody watching that they just kind of rolled the ball out there and thought that matters would take care of themselves against the lowly Browns. And why they keep thinking that way and acting that way when they have won 1 game in Cleveland in the last 8 years is beyond me. No, everybody else can look at the Browns and not take them seriously. The Steelers have to, especially up there. Whenever they go up there, it's a different kettle of fish.
Yeah, and I under the circumstances, I don't know how they couldn't have taken them seriously. I don't look at that as the problem. I just thought that their approach was prehistoric. I don't look at it like they didn't care, because if they didn't care, the defense wouldn't have played at the level they did. The defense wasn't at their absolute game-wrecking best, but it was a really good, strong defense.
It was good for 3 quarters.
It was certainly good enough to win the game. I mean, a lot of teams are going to give up an early score, first quarter, first drive, to sort of figure out, okay, what's working, what's not. And the Steelers have always been that sort of team under Tomlin, with the very exception of the very, very best Tomlin teams, 08 and 10. They've often been one that gives up an early score, like I said, either on the first drive or somewhere in the first quarter, and then figures it out and then shuts most everything down. And that was kind of the way it went on Sunday. It wasn't that. It was the approach to offense that was just so absurd that it reminded me of the Cincinnati game a year ago.
Yeah.
That was only for playoff seeding. They were already in the playoffs. I don't think the division door was open at that point. Maybe it was, but a lot of things had to happen. Whatever.
I think they needed Baltimore to lose too.
Yeah.
It was unlikely, but
it was mostly
had
for
ridiculous
playoff
game plan going into that one too. And this was reminiscent of that. My offensive key, you touched on it kind of briefly there when you brought up Freiermuth. That's my offensive key is, look, if you go to what Tomlin said on Tuesday in his press conference when he was discussing how much more zone Baltimore is playing lately, right, he always brings up Freiermuth as quote unquote a zone killer. So you see where I'm going with this, Mike. Both Mikes. If he's a zone killer, then this is the time absolutely to use him against Baltimore if they're playing much more zone than they were the first time you played him. Like, it's playing right into your hands as a reason to use Freiermuth. You have to use Freiermuth because of that.
My question to you is that after last week when he talked up Roman Wilson in multiple forums, after he did that, and then he got literally 9 snaps, and like I said, Valdez-Scantling was out there, and they were throwing deep to Adam Thielen, and they were throwing deep to Scotty Miller, and Roman didn't even, barely got a sniff. I literally never saw him on the field. I know he got 9 snaps according to the thing, but I never looked out on the field and saw him. So he might have been out there and just away from the ball. So is he just throwing Muth's name out there as a?
Oh, I don't even know that he is. I asked him specifically about it because, he has called Muth a zone killer a million times over. That's always been his sort of way to describe when he uses them, why he uses them. But he had on his own offered up the whole Baltimore plays more zone than they used to.
Right.
So I was trying to put 2 and 2 together and get 4, and I think they should do exactly that.
Oh,
maybe
I couldn't agree more.
7 for a change instead of 3. That would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, use him as you would, in a sense, DK, in that he is a reliable target. When he's open, he catches. And, okay, if they start to shade him more, then maybe you can find some other elements of the passing game, Jonnu or maybe Austin if he's back and playing effectively. But you've got to build the foundation of the passing game around Muth. There's nobody else out there that has earned that. No one else out there that's going to bother Baltimore at that level.
My defensive key is, all right, look, I'm sorry. I know this is hard, but you got to stop 2 at once.
Yeah.
You got to stop a mobile quarterback and still keep a good running back or 2 in check. They failed to do that with Allen and Cook against Buffalo. Fields and Breece Hall way back in week 1, Herbert and Vidal in Los Angeles, and the last time they played against the Ravens when it was either Derrick Henry or Mitchell, the other running back, and Jackson. They got to do better this time. Whether it's going to be Jackson for the whole game or Huntley, it looks like Jackson's going to be the guy to start. He's saying that he's going to start. It's a difficult thing to try to control a running quarterback that has good speed and good quicks or good power like a Josh Allen, and a running back too. And the Steelers largely have kept those quarterbacks in check, but the running backs have all gotten loose. All those guys that I mentioned. It's kind of like the running quarterback has been a distraction to them when they've had one on the field. And the really good, in a lot of cases, running back, Breece Hall, Derrick Henry, Keaton Mitchell, who got the big run, but maybe not an elite running back. Kamani Vidal, who's serviceable and good enough. The running quarterback seems to distract them from the job of taking care of the running back. When they've had just one running back, just like go get the running back and not have to worry about it. Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, DeAndre Swift. They've done a really good job, actually. Like, for as much as we kill the run defense, when it's been one single task-oriented goal, stop that guy, they've largely stopped him.
Yeah.
But the prime example being Jonathan Taylor in the Colts game that started their downward slide and kept the Steelers' season alive. However, you just have to do it. There's no way around it. If Jackson's going to play, you got to stop Jackson and not let Henry kill you.
I will 100% agree with that whole idea. The one area where I will say that I would maybe twist it, maybe color it a little bit is in the first Baltimore game. A lot of the production that Henry and Jackson got was empty calorie yards to an extent. Not totally empty, but Steelers are ahead. They are trying to protect the lead. If you are willing to commit to running the football as opposed to passing it, it's going to take you longer to catch up. So we're kind of okay with that. It's the same as playing somewhat. I mean, they were playing softer just to prevent the long passes and that sort of thing. So there was more room for Baltimore to run. And Baltimore consented to say, okay, we're going to get back into this doing what we do best, which is run the football. And you're not stopping it very well. So a lot of those yards that look bad on the stat sheet didn't help Baltimore win the game because they didn't win the game. Would it be now? All that said, they're probably going to have to do exactly what you said because of the idea of the Steelers scoring. I think 29 points was the number in the first win, 29 or 27. The number that they scored in the first one, I don't see them getting to that with what they have offensively now with DK missing. So they're going to have to do more of what you said, which is find a way to control both of those elements of the game at the same time.
What's your defensive key?
Yeah, for me, again, you just have to stop. You know, it somewhat is similar to yours. Derrick Henry, like I said, in the last game, he had 94 yards on 25 carries. That adds to a pretty big rushing total by the team. It looks bad on the stat sheet, but it didn't matter. I mean, if you can have him average less than 4 yards a carry again, I mean, sign up for that right now. And I think that I think they have the ability to do that. It obviously somewhat depends on who plays quarterback and how they play. I mean, we've seen what Huntley has done, and we have seen Jackson through most of this year be relatively ineffective, not totally ineffective, but on the Lamar Jackson scale, he's been really ineffective. He played at an MVP level for most of the previous 3-4 years. He's not been anywhere near that. So I look at it and say, if you control Henry, and he's going to get a lot of carries, he's probably going to get a fair number of yards. But if you can keep him to that ballpark, 3.5, 3.8, something like that, I think that you're at least in the picture to win the game.
Well, my bonus key is sort of a reminder to Steelers fans, based on how things went in Baltimore the first time, based on how things went in Detroit. What happened against the Browns is what happens when you don't get all the big calls, okay? I know you're not happy about the Cam Hayward hit that resulted in a flag. I thought that was a crappy call, too. I thought it was pass interference on Ward on the last play. I thought it should have been flagged as well. But you're not going to get every call, particularly when you throw the ball to the same guy 3 times in a row in the end zone, and none of them are particularly wide open or easy plays to make. You're not going to get the benefit of the doubt on that call. It's sort of like complaining about not getting a 5th power play in the 3rd period of a hockey game when you've gotten 4 already and you've gone 0 for 4 and the crowd's just yelling shoot the whole time. Like, the refs just aren't going to give you the benefit of the doubt. It's like a bad free throw shooter, Mike, who gets fouled over and over again and keeps missing free throws. The refs are less inclined to give him a foul call in a 50-50 situation after 6 or 7 empty trips. So, like, I'm not irate over them not getting that call at the end of the game, because I was more irate about the decision that was being made to throw the football to MVS in the first place as opposed to Gainwell, who was open. So I know I set a world record, I'm pretty sure, for the number of tweets and emails that I got from people saying that the fix was in, that this was a fixed game, that this was an example of a fixed game against the Cleveland Browns. And what I have to say back to you is, no, it wasn't fixed. They just didn't get the breaks that they needed officiating-wise, that they did against Detroit, that they did against Baltimore the first time. And if it's a fix because Boz missed a field goal, if it's a fix because Duggar got spun around on the big touchdown pass to Fannin, if it's a fix because of all those things, then was it a fix as well when Highsmith was sacking Shadur Sanders? Maybe it was a fix because Herbig dropped the ball, right? Well, was it a fix like when Duggar caught his interception as opposed to when he got spun around? Like, tell me where the fix is and who is in on it. Because everybody likes to say that and point to specific examples, but you can always counter it with who's playing on the other side. And, like, when those same players did something good in the game, which was easy to identify in this case.
Yeah, I just don't understand why people do this. If you believe that, why do you watch? I don't know. I guess maybe the same people watch wrestling. I don't know. And I don't mean collegiate wrestling, obviously. I have no time for that. Do refs sometimes, especially in basketball, get influenced by home crowds? Yeah, I've been covering basketball for too long. Do I really think they're worried about the dog pound coming over the railing? Because if they call PI there, Cleveland will go 3-12 and maybe have a better pick. No, I don't think they care. But sometimes refs don't do a good job. As a matter of fact, a lot of times refs don't do a good job. Should that have been a PI? Yeah, probably. But I was much more frustrated with the decision on the pass. And going back, I mean, the execution on 2nd and 3rd down, either one of those could have been a touchdown with a good throw, especially the second one. If he throws back shoulder, why would he throw inside when that's where Ward was on both plays? Ward played Valdez-Scantling to the inside on both of those, and that's where Rodgers threw the football. If he throws to the outside on one of those two, then he might have realized, you know what? And if it didn't turn into a touchdown, he might have realized, hey, maybe I don't throw to the guy with the throw the ball to the guy whose hands kept him out of the league much of this year.
Yeah. Against the Pro Bowl corner.
You have to do better than that.
Yeah. What's yours? What's your bonus key?
Yeah, TJ. It's that simple. TJ Watt, his return, what could it mean? I think that one of the things that's interesting about the idea of his return is that he often gets down the line against Baltimore. When Baltimore's running the football, he gets down the line a lot. What he often does as well is zero in on the guy who doesn't have the ball. That's not winning this game. It didn't win in Baltimore last year in the playoff game. He hit the wrong guy, and that may have been the way it was designed, but he hit the guy without the football so many times, so hard. I was shocked that player, in that case Henry, but in some cases Lamar, I was shocked that player finished the game. But if he plays, how does he play? And what does it mean to the team? That's, to me, the bonus is if you get back some version of vintage TJ, maybe he's a game changer in this game.
Yeah, I feel a lot of that. And I do think that his absence has been minimized this year in part because they weren't as reliant on him making every big play to win games as has been the case in years past. So that part of the calculus wasn't as noticeable by his absence. And on top of that, Highsmith, since he's come back from his injury, has been quite good. Sawyer's been pretty good. Herbig hasn't been as good coming back from his injury. So that's kind of maximized things on the other side. But I still think the outside linebacker play and the fact that they haven't been as reliant on sacks to get off the field or create turnovers, strictly coming from Watt, has kind of mitigated his absence some. And I don't think that you can pin the Browns' loss on TJ being out, or frankly, any other game where they have lost, you could look at it and say it was a Watt-dependent thing because he wasn't there. Say, like, for instance, when they went 2-6 to start that one year where he was out with the pec injury. It's not been as much about TJ, but this game and the outside linebackers, Highsmith especially, yeah, I think this is really dependent on how those guys play, set the edge, and pen Henry back in between the tackles, which, by the way, segues quite nicely into our on the other sideline. This is where we look at the opposing teams for the Steelers and a theme to preview this week's game from their point of view. And I'll stay right there on that track. John Harbaugh has to stay within the same principles of leaning on Henry, regardless of how healthy Lamar Jackson is or isn't. And there was a great deal of dialogue this week in Pittsburgh. I don't know if it got as much attention in Baltimore as it did here even, but Mike, you heard it, I'm sure, on Sports Talk Radio, read it in columns and read it online. Like, are the Steelers better served if a less than 100% Lamar does play, because then he's playing not at top capacity, and maybe because it's just him that's out there, John Harbaugh falls into his ways that he was at times against the Steelers and many times this year, just not giving it to Henry enough. I could see that. I see the reason why people build that argument. I still would prefer to not have Jackson in there because he's the better player. He's the better quarterback. But I do get the psychological belief of, well, you know what? John Harbaugh has had a tendency to do this before, to get away from Henry because he sees Jackson out there and he wants him to throw more. He wants Jackson to run more, and bad things happen against Pittsburgh. It's true. A lot of them because of TJ Watt over the years, to go back to your previous point. But if I'm Harbaugh, I just look at what happened against the Packers, look at what's happened against the Steelers for various teams, as we talked about before, that have dual threat approaches to the running game, and I let my running back do the work.
It's interesting that you bring up the Huntley question, because that is my element of on the other sideline. And I think it's an interesting discussion because if you're the Ravens, first of all, you have seen what Lamar is during his injury period, his compromised period. And he has not been overwhelming. He has beaten a lot of low quality teams, and he and they dominated, although the defense really did most of the work, and the weather when they played at Cincinnati, and Cincinnati didn't, I believe, since the final score was 24-0. So it was partly the defense as well. But the two best wins right now, the only two wins that Baltimore has over winning NFL teams in this season were both quarterbacked by Tyler Huntley. That's the Baltimore-Chicago game from toward the end of Lamar's injury, toward the end of the early tough stretch that they had, where they were really buried early by the schedule. And we talked about how they got dug into this big hole, Baltimore, and they had Chicago coming into their place, and Chicago's now on the precipice of a division championship. So we knew they were going to be good, and it was a game where Baltimore could have really been buried, and if Chicago had taken care of it, they'd be out. Even the Cleveland game wouldn't have mattered for the Steelers. The Baltimore would already be finished. But that didn't happen because Tyler played great, and they won the game. And then again, going up last week to Green Bay, a Green Bay team that's fighting for playoff positioning and possibly a division championship, coming off a disappointing loss and playing at home on a Saturday night in prime time. And goodness, that should have been an occasion for a better performance. And Tyler Huntley wiped them off the field. Now, obviously, it was what was, a huge part of that was the guy coming up behind him and taking the ball from him. But Huntley was really good. He hit all the throws. He made big runs. He played very well in both of those two. So that's why it's an interesting question. I still think if you're the Ravens, and unless your doctors say no, if your doctors say he can go, you have to play Lamar because one, theoretically gives you a better chance to win on Sunday, and two, it definitely would give you a better chance to win in your one playoff game, and it would be for them again a home playoff game because whoever wins on Sunday night is the division champion and gets a home playoff game. So that's why it makes perfect sense to start Lamar. But it is an interesting conversation because of how good Huntley has been and how impressive he has been in two really big games. Again, if Lamar goes out against the Steelers on Sunday night and doesn't beat them, he will have gone through the entire NFL regular season without beating a winning team. Not one.
Well, I guess I hadn't looked at it that way, but it is very much part of the equation here. From what they have done to beat good teams or not beat good teams. And yeah, the Steelers will have a winning record. I don't know how good of a team they are. They might be good enough to win this crummy division. If they don't, then the Ravens are good enough to win this crummy division, and that's that. But we'll get into that a little bit more, I suppose, when we get into our NFL segment. Not only where they slotted this game, but how the games are going to be slotted on Saturday and so forth. We'll get to all that later on. But let's get to our stat pack right now. This is where we try to find the most telling stat heading into this game. We've talked so much about Jackson and Henry already. I figured we would. We give you a bunch of stats and a bunch of numbers about the run game and results and things like that going back all year. But I'll focus on the pass game for Baltimore here for a second. And my numbers are 16 and 665. Zay Flowers has 665 more yards receiving than any other Ravens pass catcher. So consider that for a second. It's kind of like the DK Metcalf thing, to be honest with you, the disparity between receiver 1 and receiver 2, 3, or 4. But when the Ravens went with one wide receiver last week, 16 of the 23 snaps was Devontae Walker. He wasn't targeted, but it's a tell. When he's out there, he's blocking, and they are running. So keep that in mind when you're watching and you see one guy out there and it's not Zay Flowers. What's that tell you? You probably shouldn't need a tell at all to know that the Ravens are going to run with Derrick Henry. You shouldn't, but like back to our previous conversation with the way things go with Harbaugh sometimes, maybe it helps. And that could be it. Who's out there in the one wide receiver looks.
Yeah, I don't think the Steelers have thrown a lot with Spencer Anderson on the field either. The only thing you don't know when in those situations is which direction and what form the run's going to take. Is it going to be a sweep, a toss, inside zone, whatever it might be, a trap? You don't know what direction the play is going to take, but you know what the play is going to entail. And so I think it does help to know what's coming, but it also would help more to know how it's coming.
And you don't know if it's coming from Jackson. You don't know if it's coming from Henry. And the one
Right.
time where Mitchell took it for 55, that was a big play that sort of bolstered the stats for the Ravens in that game. I'm trying to remember if that resulted in a touchdown or not. I can't off the top of my head. But at any rate, what's your stat, Mike?
My stat is 1.7. And what that is the number of yards the Steelers averaged on conventional third down run plays in Cleveland. 1.7, 0 conversions, by the way. They ran 3 times for 5 yards. They lost yardage on one of those plays, and then they followed it with they lost yards on the second down play. This is the one everybody focused on, and I have focused on. I mentioned it early, the Scotty Miller throw on 4th and 1. And I was with my brother last night, and he said that was the worst call the Steelers have had. The 4th down and 1 go route to Scotty Miller was the worst call they've had all year, or the worst call that he can remember, or whatever. I said it wasn't even the worst call in that game. It was really bad. But the worst call in that game was 6 and change left, 6:21 remaining in a game to clinch a playoff spot. Immediately after Jaylen Warren had run for -1 yard. So now it's 3rd and 4, and they run the ball again. They're down at 4 points. They need a touchdown. They need to possess the football, and they run it on 3rd and 4. What about that game had said, oh, yeah, that's going to work?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. And
in that situation, Mike, if punting is even an option, then you throw the ball there.
Absolutely. And they ended up punting the ball. And I think they might have thought, well, we'll just get part of the way there. But they had lost yards on the previous run. So why would you assume that you're going to gain yards there? And they lost 2, and they wound up in a 3rd and 6. And now going forward on 4th down doesn't make any sense, and they wind up having to punt. And you saw what ended up happening as a result. Some of the things that they do on offense are absolutely baffling. And
yeah, that 3rd and 4 play, I was thinking the same thing when it happened. Like, that probably was their mentality. We need to get a little bit closer so we can go for it on 4th down. But, like, you can't throw the ball more than 5 yards in the air.
Right.
Or you can't design something if you're a famous 3rd and short of the sticks passing offense that allows the guy to catch the ball and run 1 more yard after you get 3 air yards. I mean, it is so self-defeating sometimes the way they approach offense. It is
absolutely. They lead the world in give-up plays.
Yeah.
Teams convert 3rd and 12, 3rd and 14 against them all the time because that's how because of their zone, and it's happened. It's not like, oh, they're batting great averages against it, but it happens in nearly every game. But how many times have you seen the Steelers convert 3rd and 14? It's very rare. And usually when it happens, it's, oh, they threw the ball to Gainwell short of the sticks, and then he happened to dash it off. Or Darnell Washington ran over 17 guys before he broke his arm back in the prime Darnell Washington days, and that's how they converted. But conversions at the sticks, by hitting a tight end over the middle or somebody on an in route or something like that, doesn't happen. And that was the running equivalent of that. They had a chance to control that football down and score a touchdown and go ahead and score. And if they had done that, Tim, I'm telling you right now, that defense doesn't let Cleveland move the ball. With a lead in that situation, they just shut it down. That they were playing well enough at that point that they just shut it down. But instead, they run that silly play to Gainwell. They lose 2 yards. They wind up punting, and the rest of the game goes to heck.
Well, for stats for our stat pack, I'll go back to a couple from that Cleveland game. You mentioned the 0 for 3 in those situations specifically on 3rd down. They were 3 of 18 when it came to 3rd down and 4th downs. 3 of 18 on conversion snaps offensively. And how about this? I'll credit Chris Adamski from the Trib for mining this one during the game even. He put it out there. They had 1 red zone snap prior to the red zone sequence that blew up in their faces at the end of the game. Like the 4 and out or whatever it was. But before Freiermuth got them in the red zone in the waning moments of that football game, they had 1 red zone snap, which is just baffling to think about. I know Cleveland has a good defense.
They do. They have a very good defense, and may be great if they had an offense to support it.
Yeah, but let's be fair. To the point that you should assume you're not going to score a touchdown. No. I think 14 of their 15 games, teams were able to score at least 1 touchdown prior to Pittsburgh. So, score a touchdown on top of those 2 field goals, and you at least get to a tie, and a tie would have prevented this game from even mattering. Even if you just got to overtime and you tied the again up there, you'd be in better shape for this game coming up against Baltimore on Sunday night. All right, let's get to who will take flight. This is where we talk about flight night at Mike's each and every Monday night. It's an opportunity for you to go there and try one of their many craft beers. They've got over 80 rotating taps. Flight night at Mike's is always great to swing by and see what they have available. They've got over 500 available craft beers. Get yourself a steak and a stone. Mike's Beer Bar right across from PNC Park at the base of the Clemente Bridge. And you can go there before the game on Sunday as well. And then Monday night, I don't know what you'll be watching because it won't be Monday Night Football this week, but it could be for the next week for the playoffs. Is that right?
Yeah. The college football playoff is coming up.
College football playoff, right. Yeah, exactly. So you could go there and enjoy Mike's for that reason and many others. So what about you, Mike? Who's your guys that will take flight for each team this week?
Well, we go back to those great stats that suggest about what Harmon means to the Steelers' rush defense. And obviously, this week, the rush defense is the foundation of what the Steelers will do on that side of the football. So I'm going Derek Harmon to take flight for the Steelers. His presence has to be a securing factor in the run game, both in terms of controlling the primary running back as well as either whether it's Jackson or Huntley, and I expect it'll be Jackson. He's got to be able to help do the job of keeping him in the pocket and not allowing him to get free. So that's my guy on that end. And I know what Zay Flowers is capable of. I like what you're saying, what you're going to say coming up, but he's the guy that the Steelers have to be worried about in the pass game. You gave all the stats and all the reasons. I had not seen those stats when I suggested Zay.
Yeah, those are courtesy of my buddy Matt Williamson from
Yes.
Fox Sports Pittsburgh 970. He got a couple of those.
So he's the guy that obviously the Steelers have to watch and not allow him to take too much flight, but I suspect that he'll have a game.
Well, if you're going to go with Zay, I'll go on the other side of the ball, and I'll say Joey Porter. I don't think I've used him for this category in our rundowns each and every week going into our show. I thought this would be a good time to put Joey into the mix because I think he's been pretty good lately. And for all the reasons and numbers that I outlined about the importance of who Flowers is and what he is to their pass game, from right down the road here in Boston College, as I'm sitting here looking at Beacon Hill right now, Mike. So that's where he did his damage in college football. Porter, I think he's playing well, and if he gets the assignment largely of shutting down Zay, it'll be a real feather in his cap if they win this football game, because that would mean at some point the Steelers are playing from ahead, and he's doing a good job of taking away their primary pass-catching option. So I'm going to say Joey Porter Jr. for the Steelers.
Let me use this. This may be our last regular. It is our last regular season show. Let me use this moment to say that Joey Porter's had a fantastic year. I mean, he's now like there were some penalties and all that, but you have to remember that you're watching the Steelers every single game. You're watching every single play, and every time something happens that you don't like that Joey Porter does, you think, oh, there you go. But on balance, he's had a fantastic third year in the league. He had a very nice rookie year, a tough sophomore season, but he's bounced back with a really strong. The statistics say in a lot of instances what he's been able to accomplish. He has got the longest streak of not giving up a touchdown against him of any corner in the league right now. Now, don't want to jinx that, but that's a fact. I think, and he's starting to tackle more as well when teams try to isolate him in the run game. He's starting to tackle more and better. I think he's had a really great year. And a lot of, like, it's the same thing that kind of happened to Broderick Jones. Once you get on the wrong side of the fan base, it's really almost impossible to get back. But I will say this, I don't think the Steelers are going to make the Super Bowl. And, you know, given the various defections and injuries and things that happen on the way from here to the Pro Bowl, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see him as a alternate pick that's eventually appointed. He's played that well, I believe, and deserves the credit for that.
The Raven I went with was Rosengarten, the right tackle, going up against a slowed TJ Watt and a rookie in Jack Sawyer. They should be able to run behind him throughout most of the game, I would think. I didn't want to go with the obvious and just say Henry or say Jackson. So if I'm looking for someone else, I'll look for him. And that should be an interesting matchup to watch. But, yeah, I mean, obviously it's Henry. It's always Henry, and that's part of the reason why they're in the situation that they're in, because they've forgotten that it should be Henry every time themselves. And we kind of covered that earth already. We've tilled the soil there. So
yes.
Let's get to our Around the League segment next. A couple nuggets from across the NFL that may or may not have anything to do with the Steelers. I want to chew on this for a second, Mike, because people will be talking about this after the fact, I'm sure. If the Steelers do beat the Ravens, does it matter which team the Steelers play if they host a wild card game? I bet they lose to whoever it is without the quasi-bye they could have had. Maybe if they had had a bye week, I'd feel differently. But, to look at the history, and people have done this a lot, I don't know what the current numbers are, what the Steelers and Ravens records are after they play each other is usually pretty bad the very next week. And if they have to go stem to stern to win a tight slobber knocker 4-quarter game against the Ravens, then spin around and play maybe on a Saturday, maybe on a short week. We'll see what they do to them schedule-wise. But if it's Houston or Jacksonville or the Chargers or the Bills, I think they would be a very worthy underdog at home against any of those teams in a first-round playoff game. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that 100%. They're an underdog this week to a team that has a lesser record than they do. So yeah, they would definitely be an underdog against any of those teams. The one I think that would be, in some ways, would be most interesting. And again, I was entertaining these discussions when all that had to happen for the Steelers to make the playoffs was for the Ravens to lose.
Right.
But now it's like, oh well, whatever. Because just winning this game would be something. If they were to play Houston in the playoffs, I think that would be fascinating, because Houston's is exactly the antithesis of what I discussed earlier in the game about Baltimore's pass rush. Houston is like this, sort of maybe this close to like the Steel Curtain or the Purple People Eaters with the way
their defense is dominant.
Right. Oh man, and their pass rush is ridiculous. And so that would to me be an interesting opponent for them. And I'm only bringing that up, like I said, because of the dichotomy between what works against the Steelers and what doesn't. And but I think that worrying about next week now, they blew that luxury. They had the opportunity to have that, and they blew it. So it's really all about Sunday night.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's one they're all flawed to some degree or another. So it's not like they couldn't win any of those games. I guess I would say the Chargers, just because of the Herbert and the playoffs factor, and I think a Harbaugh can blow a game just as easily as they could win a game. It's part of the reason people have faith in this game that John Harbaugh is going to do something stupid when he sees Mike Tomlin on the other side of the line of scrimmage. I think there's something to that. Let's see about Jim Harbaugh, who was close but no cigar as a player here in Pittsburgh back in 1995, 30 years ago. We all remember that. Did you see that thing, by the way, that the NFL was putting out there? I think it's just for giggles. Basically, it looked like they had canned interviews with every head coach, and they asked the head coach who currently among NFL head coaches actually has more rushing yards than Bo Jackson. And even John Harbaugh couldn't come up with the answer, being Jim Harbaugh.
That's great. I had not seen
it. It was pretty funny. It was
wonderful.
A pretty funny bit. And John handled it pretty well. I mean, like, he was laughing at himself. It was a funny bit. But, yeah, I think probably the Chargers is the answer there, because their offensive line is an issue.
Right.
And, the West Coast team coming to Pittsburgh, maybe this time if the Chargers were to come in a playoff game, it won't be 60 degrees like it was in 1994 to make them feel at home. We all for that. But I guess that would be my answer to my own question. What about you? What other league stuff? I'll say one thing about the NFC too. Boy, the Rams defense is becoming an issue, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Really struggled against Chicago on Monday night. That it is a problem. There's no doubt. The teams have moved the ball on them. They're going to have an issue in the playoffs, and we're looking now, and that sort of connects to what mine is that people are talking a lot about Matthew Stafford as an MVP, and his stats are glittering and all that, but in part because of what you talked about, and it's no fault of his own, but that's part of football, right? I mean, they're probably going to finish third in their own division, and you're going to have an MVP from a team that finished third out of 4 teams in their division. Why not Sam Darnold? I mean, it doesn't have to be.
Why not Sam Darnold going back to March when the Steelers are looking for a quarterback? Why not?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're seeing somewhat why teams were skeptical of him as, okay, I'm going to invest my future in him. I think we're seeing somewhat why they did that. I'm not going to say it's the right call, because the Steelers would be a better football team right now if they'd hired Sam Darnold, and would be a better football team next year for sure. Because for at least 2 years, like, even if you get the exact right rookie quarterback, even if you get your Patrick Mahomes in next year's draft, it's not going to be that first year. So for the next 2 years, you would be a better football team with Sam Darnold. So I'm not saying that. He throws a lot of picks, and that's why teams, that's a reflection of why teams were skeptical of him coming out of Minneapolis, out of Minnesota. But I think he has played as well in terms of trying to be a winning force as any player in the league. And I just don't like the idea that it's a stat award. It just shouldn't be that. And if it's a stat award, then it should be opened up to every stat. It should be, okay, like if wins don't matter, then why not Myles Garrett? Because Myles Garrett just won his team a game. I know they only won 4, but he just won his team a game just by being on the field, Tim. Like, if Myles was hurt last week, the Steelers win the game because they don't have to spend 75% of their offensive energy trying to make sure that he doesn't wreck everything they do. So if it's just going to be a stat award, why not sacks as a stat or receptions or whatever it might be? I just reject this whole idea that it has to be a quarterback and it has to be the guy with the prettiest stats. If it has to be a quarterback, then maybe it should be Sam Darnold. If it's going to be about pretty stats, then let's open it up to every category.
Well, let's get right now to our comments from today. And see, Mike, I didn't build a straw man on this. Let's go to this guy at the bottom with the cat face. The NFL is fake. When legal betting is in the NFL, it's fake. So look, there was always legal betting. Like it was always legal in Vegas. You could always make legal bets. So it's just that they are in bed with the gambling outlets now, and they are sponsors of the league and corporate partners of the league. But if you're saying it's fake, again, I will say to you, if it's staged, why was Kyle Duggar faking it, and why was it part of the work when he screwed up the interception he could have had on Harold Fannin? And then he decided to intercept the ball later in the game when Shedeur threw it like, a can of corn. Right. Is that what they want us to think? Is that part of what this is? I mean, people only say that the NFL is fake or staged when they lose money on it. So basically, you decided that you were going to bet against the Steelers, and it came back and bit you in the ass. That's what happened.
Do people understand how much choreography would have to happen?
Yeah, like look at Jay Glazer last week. Like they got this one stupid incident with the fan in Detroit, and he's able to, within 2 weeks, procure this entire back and forth between Seattle and Detroit and the NFL about this guy. Like, you don't think there's one guy? First of all, there's so many gambling outlets out there. This could be like the South Park episode with the kids trying to lose baseball on purpose. Like, whose master are you serving here? Like, they could all be trying to fix it for different people. It's not one the fix is in. This isn't just the Chicago Black Sox against the Reds back in 1919. Like, there are multiple forces at work here.
Well, Mike Tomlin has an 8-figure job to win football games. And he's going to risk that by trying to manipulate things or he's going to go along with the manipulation that would be against him so that eventually he might not have an 8-figure job. All this stuff is nonsense. And why do people even do that? I don't know. Maybe it's just to make themselves feel better. Like, have there been circumstances when sports have been gerrymandered in the past? Yeah. I mean, we all know about the NBA ref that happened. We've seen it happen on occasion now with college athletes. We saw it happen up in Cleveland with the pitchers. There are individual actors who will do that. And why they do that, given the risk versus the reward, I don't know. But we see that sometimes. But the whole thing being this big show, I mean, my goodness, it's just absurd.
This guy, I think it's Kelly9591. That's probably for Greg Lloyd and Kevin Green, if I'm guessing here. They say if the Steelers lose this week or next week, if they make the playoffs, Tomlin's going to hear it from the fans. Maybe he spares Rooney the embarrassment and resigns. I bet you he doesn't. I don't think that's going to happen. And I think he definitely wants at least 20 here. As bad as things feel right now, as mad as people are, I don't think Rooney's hearing it. I don't think he heard the Tomlin chants, the fire Tomlin chants the first time, or if he did, it was white noise and he ignored them. It's going to get ugly and get ugly early in this game because of what happened in Cleveland if the Steelers get off to a bad start. And it could be a 3.5-hour embarrassment if they play poorly. Absolutely. Still don't think it's going to matter. Still don't think the owner cares.
Well, I think he cares, but I don't think he cares.
I don't think he cares to engage in that part of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he is following what his father's method was, which is that you build an organization that is in the picture, and that when you get the absolute most important details right, which is obviously starts with the quarterback, then that's when you start to think about we can win those biggest games. And I'm not talking about huge game Sunday night. They shouldn't even be in a huge game Sunday night. They should be in an exhibition. I'm talking about winning the games that happen in January, later on in January, in February. Those games those happen when you have the quarterback right. And they've in their entire history, they got to the big game one time when their quarterback was just adequate. One time, 1995. It's the only time. Every other time they had elite talent at that position. So you need to get that right. And I don't think that you get better by, I'll say this again, you don't get better by moving on from successful coaches. Look at Pitt basketball. You don't have to look any farther than that. When I was doing radio appearances here in Pittsburgh in the earlier part of this decade, the last decade, almost 15 years ago now, when they after they missed the 2009 Final Four, after they lost in the in the second round when they were a 1 seed, every single time I went on to talk about basketball, I wound up having to defend Jamie Dixon. And look at where Pitt basketball has been since he decided, I've had enough of this. And so I don't think that you get better by doing that. I do think that there are things that they need to do within the organization, in addition to finding your next Ben Roethlisberger, your next Patrick Mahomes, whatever. In addition to that they need to do. But moving on from Tomlin is not one of them.
Or you could hire Ben Johnson.
Ben Johnson had Caleb Williams. If Ben Johnson came in here, would he be the same coach? I don't know. Maybe not. There have been lots and lots and lots of guys that have cycled through and failed. And we don't know where Ben Johnson's going to be next year or the year after.
But we also didn't know who Bill Cowher was or Mike Tomlin was or Chuck Noll was when they got hired.
Yeah, but who hired those guys?
Rooney's dad.
Yeah, and if Rooney's dad were here to make the hire and he thought it was time to – If Rooney's dad were here to make the hire and he thought that this was the time, I'd listen, because that guy was the best there ever was.
So you want to trust it? You want to trust his instinct, but you don't want to trust his judgment to hire him. I
want to trust his plan, because his plan, Rooney Sr. or Dan Rooney, his plan has been a successful plan.
I fear the approach of, we are not going to change the coach because we're afraid of what that coaching change is going to be, but we're going to trust this coach to find the next quarterback when he's been unable to do that.
Well, I think he's looked once, and I at the time predicted it would fail, and have been proven right. He's looked once. There's not a quarterback store. Oh, we just go in and look at the one on the rack over there. There's nothing like that. It's hard to get in position to get that player. They have patched together the quarterback position. For now? Well, definitely for the last 2 years, and their failed plan to get the player out of the draft consumed the previous 2 years. Whether or not that player is in this draft, I don't know. I haven't seen him.
And everybody hated every quarter. Everybody loved every quarterback in August, hated every quarterback at Thanksgiving, and now loves every quarterback again. That's kind of how it works.
Yeah, I like Mendoza. I think he's very good. I don't know that I'm totally over the moon about him. I think he's got a lot of great qualities. I'll tell you what. I was watching the Ole Miss game last night, and I thought, maybe that dude shouldn't go, Trinidad Chambliss, maybe he shouldn't go into the transfer portal, because he made some plays at the end of that game that were just spectacular. And the kind of inventive, dynamic plays that not to say he's Patrick Mahomes, but the kind of inventive, dynamic plays that Mahomes does make. And I haven't seen a guy that jumped out at me like when I saw Rodgers play at Cal back in 04, 05, saw his bowl game, and I knew he was going to be special. I haven't seen anybody jump out like that.
Pete says, if the schedule was flipped and the Steelers needed to beat the Browns this Sunday, who would win? That's a great question, because I think anytime they go to Cleveland, the answer is probably Cleveland, based on the last 8 years of results. But if you wanted to see this place burn, my God, what if it came down to that? What if it did come down to them having to go to Cleveland to win a football game to get in the playoffs, and they didn't do it?
Yeah,
now, with that extra element of needing to win have come into the play calling calculus a little bit more, maybe, especially with the tie not being an element of, we could just tie and get in. Well, I guess they could have. Either way, they could have tied and gotten in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I definitely think Tomlin would have played to the tie. I can tell you that.
That's something we hadn't thought about, but they could still tie this weekend and get in.
That's right. Yes.
If they tie the Ravens, if they get into overtime, and just get out of there.
They
with
get
the
into
tie,
overtime, it'll look like the football version of 3-on-3 hockey in overtime. They'll give the ball to Jalen Warren or Kenneth Gainwell and just have them run around, kind of like the players loop around in 3-on-3 for hockey. One more here, I'll get to it. What's the weather forecast? It's from Z-Man. What's the weather forecast Sunday night in the Berg? I actually looked it up when I saw this come in. All right, I'll give it to you. AccuWeather forecast Sunday for Acrisure Stadium. Cold with low clouds and a 3% chance of precipitation. So I don't know who that favors, really, to be honest with you.
It would seem I think the wind would be the question. What's the wind going to look like?
Oh, I didn't see the wind.
I think that after we've seen some of these windy games, I'm going to try to see if I can hit my weather.
It doesn't have like the little wind symbol on it.
So that's a good sign, I think, because you want to be the passing team in that game. That's the thing. You need to be the passing team. Yes, according to my weather app, it's below 5 miles per hour. Basically.
Well, you know what? That actually favors the Steelers then, because they've got the better kicker. So
yeah, better kicker. Plus, you want to I think the passing game has been impacted by some, obviously not up in Detroit, but I think it was impacted at least subtly up in Cleveland. You don't want that to be a factor in your final game when you have the superior passer. If given the amount of time necessary to feel comfortable in the pocket, he still is the superior passer.
All right, Mike, we'll do at least one more of these to wrap up if the Steelers lose. And if not, we'll be talking about the Houston pass rush for the better part of 1 hour next week. Or
yes.
Whatever it might be. For the Herbert factor, the Harbaugh factor, whatever the case is.
And who is your prediction for this week? We still have to do our predictions.
Segment. Oh, that's right. Well, if Jackson's playing, I'm going to go with the Ravens 20-16.
Right. And your prop?
My prop is going to be, let's see here, Henry over 100 and at least one TD. You can combine that.
Okay, well,
package that.
You know my feeling about making the prediction on the Steelers at this point. Although I did correctly identify the Browns last week against my better wishes, but I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to go Ravens 24, Steelers 23. I'm going to say in my prop, and I did hit last week with Shadur Sanders over 177 passing yards, I think it was. He blew that away. My prop this week, it was a tough one to find, but I went Aaron Rodgers over 1.5 TDs. If he throws 2 touchdown passes, you even get pretty good odds on it.
Yeah, I saw that. I like the odds on that, actually.
Yeah, it's a plus 164. So better than even money odds on him throwing 2 touchdowns. So I kind of like that.
All right, Mike, sounds good. Happy New Year again to you. Thank you for bringing us weather on the 8s. And we'll do this again one way or another next week, okay?
Happy New Year, Tim.
Happy New Year, everybody.